So then whenever I was backstage for the fight, it was almost concerning because I wasn't nervous at all. But I wasn't nervous because everything I'd said so far and basically wrote down how this is going to go. Everything had it went essentially exactly how I said it was going to go. So it was almost like I knew the end result before it happened.
Matthew, how you doing?
I'm good. How's things?
Good, good. Hopefully the eyes have settled after looking at the
Yeah,
blurry
well,
background.
yeah, it's if I glimpse away, things kind of seem a wee bit fuzzy, but they've
Yeah,
it's grand. See, look, the screen doesn't look blurry. It's just whenever I look at stuff after looking
yeah,
at the screen, it seems to distort things a bit.
that's good. There's a first for everything. Good stuff. Look, Matthew, we haven't spoken since the big win.
Yeah,
Um, we've been back and forth on text and so on. So I wanted to wait for this to get a proper conversation with you and talk about our work together before you even started, what led you reaching out, and all sorts. Before we even get into that, like, talk to me about the fight and about after it. How was it for you?
exactly what I wanted. Exactly what I've kind of been waiting for. It has been. It was good. I can't put too many other words to it than it's kind of what I've spent from the past 5 years as a pro, kind of waiting for like a breakout moment, so to speak, and or like a breakout performance. And I've always kind of been like, no matter how physically prepared I thought I was always kind of missing the mark on a performance wise. So to be able to go out and perform the way that not only everyone else knows I can perform, but how I know I can perform, it is it's reassuring.
Yeah, good, good. And we'll even thinking back before we started. So you reached out, we did the 12-week program, right, together, and then you worked through HeadDial, right?
Yeah,
But before we even reached out, I think it was on our very even like, it was the very first phone call, you talked about the mental game, right? Because
yeah.
you've been competing. Like we'll get your whole kind of journey in a snapshot, but with the mental side of things, it had been something that you'd uh, dismissed. Would that have been right before any of this?
Yeah, it's I wouldn't as much say dismiss, so I always would have told everyone that it's all mental, but then
Right.
done zero mental preparation. So discarded it in terms of actually doing the work. I wouldn't have actually done the work because my outlook on it was essentially it just happens, you just do it. So to me, being mentally prepared was just not falling apart and breaking down
Right.
without actually kind of having like a build up or like a progress to it. So being 6 weeks out training and being confident, to me that was the mental prep.
Right. So you thought the mental prep was coming from being like physically completely dialed in.
Yeah. So like in
Right.
terms of actually paying attention to my mental state, there was none of that at all. It
Mhm.
was essentially for me all my mental prep, any kind of psychology to the sport, I just assumed happened with doing the sport.
Mhm. And this is going right back. I mean, bring us right back to when you started. It's like you're going back to Commonwealth Games,
Uh,
judo.
Goes back to I've been doing judo and wrestling from I was 8, so you're talking it's going back
Eight, right?
18 years or just shy of 18 years. But
Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't have actually put it back that far. I was only really putting it back till when I started fighting. More so pro than anything. It's kind of what I put it back to. And then during the program, I had like a couple of big realizations, and then kind of was like shifting it further back and being like, right, this hasn't been, you know, I was kind of just discarding what had happened in the past and being like, oh, that's a different sport. Performances weren't really like correlated, and then going back and looking through it, I was like, I probably underperformed. I feel like people look at it and say that like I achieved a lot, like did well through judo and wrestling, but my outlook on it from now, like my perspective on it now, is that I actually massively underperformed to my potential.
And you had said a few times, even when you won, you weren't never happy with the wins, right? Or never happy
Yeah,
with the performance.
never happy with wins. Um, I think like looking back, I've been happy after winning twice. Um, before the last performance. I think you can kind of see in my face whenever it all kind of played out that I was ecstatic. But previous to that, I'd actually been like genuinely overjoyed, maybe like two, three times. Like I probably
Mm.
like point out the times as well, the competitions and the matches in which it's done it, and basically that had came purely down to like overcoming a lot during it, like in terms of like adversary. So like being down and then going from being down to them winning. So yeah, it was yeah, it's been like a consistent pattern, so to speak.
And what made you decide then to like take a step into the act? Yes, you'd said you'd always been aware that it's all mental, right? But in
Yeah,
terms of actual mental preparation, you had thought that if you prepare so well physically, the mental preparation will take care of itself, right?
yeah.
What changed that? I suppose what led you to reaching out in the first place and like actually saying, right, I've got the physical side, I know what, and I've kind of got the preparation down there. I need to start looking at the mental side. What was it that made you change that, do you think, and reach out?
Yeah, so back in September, I was my previous fight before that, and I went in and like great opponent, all the rest of it. Like since we've fought, he has two finishes on his record, so like he's by no means a slouch. But I would definitely hold myself to like a higher caliber than him. I also was really close to finishing the fight at one stage, and then in the following round, completely like it was almost like everything went out the window, and it was sorry. It was sorry, I just got a phone call in the middle. So it was like went from like the second round, but like at the end, if the round wasn't stopped, it would have had a finish to the third round coming out, and like completely disregarding what had almost happened in the last round, and going through like the whole thought process of just don't lose, and rather than being like I'm this close to winning, let's kind of like secure it, let's like get it over the line. And yeah, it was after I lost, I basically went back to the hotel. I couldn't watch the fight. I tried to actually glimpse over it. Like put it on for the guts of about 20 seconds, and was just kind of that disgusted with myself. I couldn't watch it. And then I phoned because I was away. I was on the phone to my partner and had kind of had a conversation. And my outlook on it at the time was that if I'm physically better than him. The weight cut it went well, the preparation it went well, everything was good. So if everything else outside of that was good, and I still wasn't able to perform, then maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Especially with like how much time, especially with having like a family and working a full-time job, how much time you're putting into it, it takes a lot of life away. So it does. So there's not much life outside of it. And I'd kind of went through the thought process. I mean, like this was like the immediate after, like immediately afterwards of like maybe I'm just not cut out for it. Maybe this isn't for me. And whenever I spoke to my partner about this on the phone, I was like, I feel like I'm putting too much in and not getting enough out of it. I feel like I should be further on in my career, all the rest of it. And she basically said to me, she's like, well, you've kind of had, even after the fight before that where I'd won, I came out and was like depressed because I was like, although I won, I'm better than what I showed. And that was more annoying than anything. So even though I won the fight, it was like to me, I should have finished him in the first round. And it's kind of been this recurring theme. And she'd said to me, she was like, I don't think you should kind of, she's like, I think you would be stupid to give up on anything now. She's like, there's clearly, a gap here in your psyche and it needs addressed. So she'd actually like pushed me towards it. And my dad's been saying to me for years about getting it looked at, but I'd always kind of like disregarded it, so to speak. Um, and then my woman had said to me after that, she's like, I don't think you can kind of make a decision on anything until you basically go and speak to somebody and try iron out the problems because the way she was putting it was from what she's hearing from myself and everyone else that if I could sort that mental thing out, like that wee mental block, that it's not like a small step forward in like in terms of like how I'm performing, it's gonna be a massive jump to take me to like it's there's no gap to close. If I can close that mental gap, there's no like physical or skill gap to close. That's already closed once I close the mental gap. So like I took her advice on it, and yeah, that led me to contacting a few different people, and you were heavily recommended by Donald and Jordan. Obviously they're contacting you about non-sport related stuff or potentially, but yeah, so I reached out, and within the first phone call, I was almost like you you were telling me how I felt without me telling you. And I was like, right, okay, there must be a theme here. If you're able to tell me
Mhm.
exactly what I was thinking and what my thought processes were without me telling you them first, then there must be like a pattern in how I'm thinking. And then we started the 12-week program and started breaking it down. And yeah, it was best thing I've ever done.
Mhm. And you talked there about like as if I knew you in that first phone call, right? But when
Yeah,
you started to understand things, you realize that there's patterns there, right? Particularly when it
yeah,
comes to performance, and the perfectionism when it comes to like, even though you won, wanting the
yeah,
performance to be even better, and that added pressure, like focusing on the results. Do you remember?
yeah,
Like this big emphasis on the results and the pressure on the things that are out of your control, which was all in the results and not the
yeah.
process, right? And which, where so we started off previously knowing that the mental game was important, but actually the actual work, the mental work in terms of like the psychoeducation, CBT, hypnotherapy, and so on, and then doing the work in the background. Every like big one for you is the journaling, right?
Yeah.
After every session, what went well, what didn't, what am I going to take into the next session, what am I going to build on for the next fight, and so on. Where did you start to see things working for you?
Honestly, it quite literally took me till January till we finished the program. So
Mhm.
throughout the program, I felt like my confidence was going up. Um, like during the program, it was more just like realizations. So I would get a realization and be like, almost like having like epiphanies and being like, I was doing this 10 years ago. I shouldn't have been doing this. I done this and I shouldn't have done that. Um, and it was only really once the program was wrapped up, competed in January, and basically like sat the night before visualizing and went, okay, like looked at my matches and went, this is how this match is gonna go, this is how this match is gonna go, and essentially like how I was gonna finish each match. Essentially like a complete breakdown in my head of gonna go out, do this, this'll take me to this position, and then I'll finish from this position. And on two of the matches, or two of the three matches, exactly that happened. So I was like, right, okay, it's a little bit of proof, but for me, it was like nothing was kind of cemented until it had happened in the cage. So
That was a
I get,
grappling. That was a
yeah,
grappling competition, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So like nothing had kind of happened. Like for me,
Mhm.
it wasn't like comp. It was it was like a bit of confirmation, but for me, they basically like not close the chapter on it, but basically be like, yes, this 100% works and is what I'm missing. For me, it had to happen in the cage. So
Mhm.
essentially went through the rest of January. I can't lie, I actually slacked off a wee bit. In terms of like my mental prep, I wasn't getting anywhere to fights, and I wasn't as consistent with it. And then once it kind of hit February, I was looking to get in the Cage Warriors Dublin card and like a short notice pullout, so kind of dialed everything back in. And then a fight offer came up, but at this stage, it kind of started pulling everything back together, getting a wee bit more strict with it. And then once I'd basically got fight confirmation of like opponent, it was then very opponent and fight specific. So it was. I know you mentioned like the journal would have been a really big thing, but journal like along with like visualization, so like combining
Mhm.
the two, so basically writing down what I think's gonna happen, and then and like basically that night visualizing what I thought was gonna happen or what I knew was gonna happen, and essentially like combining the two, so one was affirming the other to a degree,
Mhm.
and then
And with visualization, you mentioned it a couple of times, right? Um, that was something I believe you hadn't worked on before, right?
Yeah.
Visualization.
So with
And
me, visualization, sorry, was me like me just daydreaming, driving the car and being like, yeah, I'm gonna win this fight. That to me was
yeah,
visualization.
yeah. And so the mental imagery work, so throughout the sessions and throughout your work with on HeadDial, right? The mental imagery work, the mental preparation, the hypnosis within it, and the like things like the confidence anchor and so on. These are all mental imagery tools and mental imagery training that you worked on, right? Visualization being a key component of mental imagery, right?
Mhm.
Um, and that, like you said, coupled with the journaling aspect, right? So reflecting on what's been going well, what hasn't, and what you need to work on, and what you want to bring into the next training sessions, the next fight, and so on. And then getting very clear on what it is you want to visualize, right? Talk us through it. Like, how did that? You were saying that the big um, uh, confirmation that you're looking for was in the cage, right? Whether
Yeah.
this mental imagery work was uh, working, in your words, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So
so talk us through like UFC Fight Pass Cage Warriors, right? It's like that's as big a stage as any, right? And you're talk us through your mental prep before that.
yeah, so once the fight was confirmed, it was essentially just like sat watching my opponent, picking out like not only writing down where I thought he had like weaknesses, but where I thought he was strong as well. So like with while doing all this, I was like very adamant with myself, like just because I'm trying to visualize something, because I'm being confident, doesn't mean I need to like look past somebody, and doesn't mean I need to kind of undermine somebody's abilities to kind of affirm my own. So I was like very strong with myself in that. So going through it, I was running like slow mo and clips of him, being like, right, this is where I think I'm gonna catch him, and not only that there, but preparing how I thought the fight week, basically preparing for the fight week, because I thought the biggest thing to happen in the fight in September was that whenever it hit fight week, it didn't feel like I was supposed to be fighting, because I felt like out of sync. It hit the day of the fight, and whenever it hit the day of the fight, it was almost like, oh, I'm fighting today. There was like, it was almost like, right, okay, you're here. And at that stage, it's too late. Like there's no like your body's almost in a state of shock, because it's like, right, you've almost been thrown into it. Um, so for me, it was like mentally prepping through journaling. Then was okay. This is not only like what's been going well, what I was gonna like what I planned to get out of training that night, but it was this is what's gonna happen over the next 4 weeks. This is what's gonna happen over the next three, two, and then this is what's gonna happen fight week. Fight week's gonna play out like this. I will weigh in at this weight. My weight cut will go like this. I will be announced in this like in this color of corner. Like I'll be announced in the blue corner. This is how I'm gonna be announced. Basically, like so then like a lot of the times I would just essentially lie there visualizing, my name being called. And then they like so from watching the cage like from watching Cage Wars, you can tell what order the announcer's gonna like announce stuff in. And I've also got the voice, like his voice is just like imprinted in my head now. So like even the tone of his voice running through my head, and I basically had it all like hammered in. Okay, this is what he's gonna say. Then he'll announce my opponent. This is what he's basically gonna announce him as, and then we fight. And then even right down to how the fight ended, was like it's as close as I could get it to be without it being perfect. And it was essentially that he kept shooting with it. He always shoots head inside. Everyone from that gym always shoots head inside in their takedowns. So from looking at it in one of his previous fights, he gets hit a right hand, he circles off to the right. And then whenever your boy throws a right hand again, he shoots, takes him down, and then basically dominates him the rest of the round. So it was, I'm gonna hit him with the right hand, and then the next time I throw a right hand, he'll basically circle. Next time I throw a right hand, he'll dip, and I'll hit him with a knee and knock him out. But every day it was me picturing like my name getting announced as winner by knockout, writing it down. Uh, like I will win by knockout, and then even the whole like you would get it in the on like the HeadDial. like voice recordings. That like at the end of it, after it's kind of went through everything you're wanting to achieve, it's kind of it says repeat internally. I can, I will. Not only repeating it internally, but writing it down. I'd also went on to like the voice recordings in the head dial, and although a lot of them would be specific towards it, like what do you want to do in your career, what do you want to do in terms of friends and family, I basically went on and structured them all. So no matter, I basically just blanked that part out in my head and structured every single one of them based towards the fight. And then in the car, going to and from work, would just sit and listen to it. And it would be essentially, especially because I've worked with you as well, your voice is familiar. It's not like having a stranger talk to me. And it just like repeating that in the back of my head of this is basically the way it's gonna plan or pan out. Um, I've had like issues in the past. Like I've basically gassed in one or two. It's probably only been one fight I've gassed out in, or two fights I've gassed out in, which is two more than it should be. But because of it, I found like I had a bit of a mental block in my head of not like pulling the trigger in case I gas myself out. But even like right down to the thing of like telling myself every day, like I'm fit, I can push the pace, I've done the work, like I've put the work in, and like that constant affirmation, and yeah, played off, um, as good as it actually like it played out as good as it could have.
Brilliant. And you talked there about, you know, within head dive structure and everything in the lead up to the fight, right? So that's like mental rehearsal. So we've got that built into head dive now as a mental imagery tool where it's very specific to fight and upcoming
Yeah,
competition. So the talk me through, we had said before about even when you had won, it was like always looking back on you could have done more, it wasn't great, or like it just, you didn't feel a good
yeah,
sense of achievement and accomplishment after you'd won. With this preparation mentally, how do you think it helps with your like preparation in general? You're like walking into the cage while you're in, like talk us through while you're in the cage, like, faced with the opponent, cage doors locked, just you and him and the referee.
yeah.
And, how does all that mental preparation that you've talked about through using head dial and visualizing everything, using mental imagery, preparing, writing everything down, how does all that help you in terms of like what's going on in the body, what's going on in the mind, what's going on when you're faced with him in front of you in a cage?
Yeah, so see with it, it was like I kind of maintained my best performances came off of me being not only nervous but scared. Uh Essentially going in there fight being like if I don't perform, this guy like he will hurt me. Compared to like if I'm going out in their fight and I don't see the guy as that much of a threat, in my head, I found I've never performed as good. Where if I've went out and the guy, like I'm like, this guy's a killer, I need to be on my A game. I've always performed better. So then whenever I was backstage for the fight, it was almost concerning because I wasn't nervous at all. But I wasn't nervous because everything I'd said so far and basically wrote down how this is gonna go. Everything had it went essentially exactly how I said it was gonna go. So it was almost like I knew the end result before it happened, which was an unusual feeling because it wasn't even so much like confidence. It was almost just like I knew it was going to happen. So then, like even down to getting in the cage, even being in the cage, it was like it was all usually like you're in the cage and you're like, right, okay, I'm locked in the cage or something. It's time to go. It was almost like not that there wasn't none of that, but it was yeah, it was almost like I was sitting there and I was like, oh, I already know how this is playing out. Like I already knew how this was gonna play out, and I'd actually done visualization work and like the mental prep for ending up in bad positions and that kind of thing. But I'd done so much more of how like I wanted it to play out compared to that. So like if that didn't work, I still wouldn't have been like a fish out of water. But it was almost like I knew it was gonna happen, so I almost wasn't nervous, which was it was actually a bizarre feeling. And then
Mhm.
even in the lead up, I'd essentially told myself as well how I was gonna feel. I remember when I first started working with you, it was one of the things you kind of said to me. So it was okay. These are whenever you're doing like target setting, goal setting and stuff. Like what the end question to everything was, how will you feel after you achieve this? and it's something that you would never think about because like that it hasn't happened yet. So why would you think about how you're feeling? But every night it was, I will be feeling this. I will be feeling like this. As a result of this, like as a result of feeling like this will happen. This will get better, and even hammering in that kind of stuff as well to the stage
Mhm.
where it was, and then even like in terms of the aftermath, it's the best I've ever felt after a competition as well because I feel like I was actually able to like process the moment while it was there and enjoy it rather than it just being, uh, right, okay, what's next? So when I was out of the cage, don't get me wrong, straight away it was like what's next? But that from like a motivation factor, not from
Mhm.
like previously it was like right, I almost like felt I still had to prove something to myself. Where this
Mhm.
time it was like I wanted to get straight back out there for like because it was like I want this to happen again. I want to further my career on.
Excellent. And like before we started, probably fair to say when it come to visualization, it was something you hadn't really, well, you hadn't done before, but might have been skeptical of, right? Which a lot of
Yeah,
athletes, like particularly in elite individual sports, would consider, and fighting as well, right? You're in a
yeah,
lock cage. You sometimes you think, what the hell is visualization going to do, right? It's the most primal scenario, right? You're one on one in a
yeah.
lock cage. Where would the transfer of visualization like help your actual physical performance? Like, what would you say to, we're going to be obviously with HeadDial working with teams, working with sports teams, academies, coaches from like professional, elite, amateur, grassroots levels. Um, you know, and even in at that level, visualization is something that's only beginning to get some traction, but there's so much research and so much evidence out there now of the power of visualization, because as you know now with neuroplasticity and all the work we've done, that the same regions of the brain light up when you're vividly imagining a scenario, as the same regions light up as you were doing it physically, right? That's how when you're practicing visualization, as you know now, it's a practice, right? It's a mental skill, like any skill. Takes time and needs to be developed. Um, but what do you say to that? Like from your experience, I want to hear like from you, and what would you say to others who like are going to be using head dial?
Yeah, I also would have called its bluff. I'd said that I wouldn't have put much weight in it until yeah, it is essentially like it's almost like you have to see to believe. I feel like it's gonna be something that's it seems like such a simple fix to visualize, like to sit and actually think about how you want things to play out. It seems like such a simple fix that nobody does, that you'll not really believe the outcome of it until you've done it, until you've seen it. Even with like Paddy McCrory, who just won the Cage Wars title there from our gym, and it was like straight afterwards. Even like if you watch his vlogs, you've seen it on a story, and the one thing he's talking about, he's like, I've visualized this moment so many times, and
First thing he said, right?
yeah, it's like he's like, I've visualized this moment, and it is one of these things of like you have to you almost have to visualize it, like how you want things to play out, and then have it play out before you believe it really, before you're
Mhm.
like, oh, this works. There's something to this. Where beforehand, I think it's too easy to disregard and be like, I feel like because it's almost that simple. Like you just all visualize. It's not like you don't have to get up off the sofa. You can do it from your house. Like you could be lying in bed and visualize. And I think because of that, it's very easy to kind of look at and be like, oh, this doesn't work, or this can't affect my performance because I'm not actually doing anything. But in part,
The
you're
one
actually
thing,
doing
yeah.
the biggest thing.
Yeah, because again, the same regions of the brain light up when you're
Yeah,
visualizing vividly and you've practiced it. What I would say to that is it compounds the effect even further, and it makes it even more powerful when you're visualizing the same thing that you're training constantly all the time. Does that make sense?
yeah,
So like the fact that you're doing the thing physically and repetitions in your drills and your skills development and so on, when you do that physically and you're doing that day to day and like training to the like most elite of levels physically, and you go and prepare visually, you're getting extra reps.
Yeah.
You're essentially getting extra reps, and you're able to fine tune your own skills development. And like you said, um, you know, you started out with visualization and you had a grappling competition coming up, and you're like, ah, well, it was
Yeah.
yeah, it helped a little bit, but as we know, it's development, right? It's a skill, it takes time. So like you can see that from the start of visualizing. You also talked about leg locks. Do you remember?
Yeah.
You just kept visualizing leg locks and so on. And then that grappling competition came up. A few things went well that you visualized, and then you kept dialing in, dialing in. And then one of the things with the visualization and the mental imagery and mental rehearsal tool that you used was your personal preparation. So, like as you said, the whole week was like lined up on like literally like on this day I'm going to be doing this, feeling like this. The night before I'm going to have the whatever like you'd said
Yeah.
personally, and that's the difference when you make it personal to you, as opposed to a generic visualization that you would get on YouTube. It's so different when it's because it's about you and your routines and your structures and your like nighttime routine, morning routine, what you eat, how you pack, how all that, right? Um, does that would you
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah. No, I would totally agree. I had tried putting even with like the like you would get mindsets stuff on YouTube that I kind of try like walk you through things. I feel like it needs to be especially with like a sporting perspective, it needs to be incredibly personal because there's no point somebody telling me to visualize something that's not relevant to what I'm doing. So yeah, I feel like between visualization and then your actual repetitions, like as you'd said about like the leg lock things, it was like for myself, it was quite literally a thing of watching a few videos and almost like imagining myself in the position to where I was able like pretty quickly to catch up in a position to where I would have said the like I had like a skill deficiency and like very quickly able to catch up on it just because you can sit and picture yourself in the situation. So once you're in it, you've been like I feel like you've been in the position before because you're not looking for things, you're seeing things at that stage.
And you talked interestingly about you know the self-talk, right? The inner dialogue
Yeah.
as well, right? Um, and yes, visualizing about your sport, obviously, but how do you think that impacts your life outside the cage and outside training as well? Like, your our whole aim is mental performance, right? We're working on the mental
Mm.
performance side of things. But when you're focused on the mental performance side of things, it has an impact on your overall mental health with in terms of
Yeah.
outside the cage, outside the sport. Well, again, you expand on that from your perspective.
I feel I would swap it and put it the other way around that I feel like
Mm,
my mental performance outside affected my performance inside to where it
mm,
was like previously it would have been very negative. So it's something we talked about in a few like on a few occasions. One of them was superstition, like saluting
mm.
magpies, things like that, to where you're almost like you're basically placing blame on if something bad throughout your day happens, you're placing blame on something imaginary. They kind of like offset the weight of yourself. It's all like them, like safety nets, so to speak. And then, like for me, it seemed to be like the biggest thing consistently was catastrophizing, to where it was like was catastrophizing, whether it was things at work or things, like the big one that stands out was about the dog, the side gate not being fully shut, me thinking the dog had ran out into the road and to the stage I'd worked myself into that much of a state that I basically got in the van and started driving home from work, 2 hours in it. And just to get a text from my partner saying that everything was grand and that, she was like, thanks for letting me know. But in my head, she was in the street running about and the dog was there. And what you don't realize, or what I wasn't realizing, was how it's the same as like how you approach something, it's how you approach everything. So, like, that same mindset was kind of passing over to sport, like to the mental performance, to where I was catastrophizing things. So, even with that fight in September, with myself, it was like I wasn't thinking about so like what happens if I win. I was like, well, like worst case scenario, if I lose, I can do this or I can do this. But as you were saying at the time, it was like, so what are you doing? You're constantly thinking about losing like trying to create these safety nets because you're putting that much pressure on yourself. So I always found it was the like correcting my mental focus outside of the sport directly affected my mental performance in the sport more so than the other way about. I feel like being dialed in like that, a lot of that actually came from dialing myself in outside of fighting, which is something that I never really thought of much at the time. I never would have put two and two together. But
Mhm.
it was whenever you mentioned it to me, it was like I say most of the work we done was actually on my mental state outside of fighting, and just like general life, and then it actually massively correlated over to the stage where that whenever I was doing all the mental work for my fight, um, it definitely didn't have like um a negative effect on my outside life at all.
And in terms of preparing mentally, like for example, that last fight, even the fight before your win, so previous professional cage warriors fights, right? Um, like what would have been your thinking leading up to that? Like fights like that, would you have prepared? We know that you were talking about you would have prepared mentally. Would it have been focusing on not losing,
Yeah.
or
So it was,
okay,
it was the entire focus was always don't lose. But
right?
like as you're saying, whenever you're thinking to yourself, don't lose, like lose is kind of plastered across
Mm,
your head at that stage, rather than
mm,
being like win and do this to win under every condition. It was always don't lose. And it was always yes, I wanted to win that bad that I was that terrified of losing. So
mm,
like to me, like losing was like it was the end of the world. I put so much weight on it that it was essentially all I was thinking about because it was like there was nothing in the world worse to me than going out and losing a fight.
mm.
Um, so much so that putting all that weight in it, like incredibly held me back.
So rehearsing that lead up to the fight is, would you say that that's almost like um allows you to, it feels better when you're focusing on how you want the process, what's
Yeah,
in your control, right? The day to day, what's in your control leading up to that fight, and then describing every moment of walking out, right? So you've almost relived it, right?
yeah. That's yeah. So whenever you're actually doing it, you're not doing it for the first time. It's yeah, it was like essentially as you were putting it to the point more or less.
And how, like in terms of repetitions of the mental imagery work and the visualization work, and the recordings, your personalized recordings within HeadDial, how often, like, what was your sequence leading up to that fight? How often were you listening to them?
So with the voice recordings, it was when I was in the car. So
Mm,
I think mine were structured at like say 7 or 8 minutes long. So I would just put them all in the car because it was always in the car for 20 or 30 minutes. Every like I'm basically guaranteed to be. So just every time I was making a trip, just put it on for 7 or 8 minutes. And then the rest of the time you can sit and enjoy listening to music or whatever it is you want to be listening to. And then in terms of visualization, it was whenever I was like heat acclimating for cutting weight, I would set a timer for 20 minutes and basically submerge myself in a bath just to get used to the heat and just close my eyes and just spent 20 minutes then. So it was like in terms of visualization, um, the actual like real concentrated part was like at minimum was doing 20 minutes a night. And then with the voice recordings, it was just anytime I was in the car.
And moving forward, then, what are your thoughts on mental performance as part of your practice, as part of your training?
I feel like it's as much, uh, it is as much of my training as my physical training is. So I always would have considered training just physical. Uh, now it was, now to me, whenever a bit further out, physical for me would still probably kind of take the priority. But the closer and closer it gets to competition day, like that balance starts to change to want like by the time you hit fight week. Um, it's entirely mental at that stage. So it's like about being 100% dialed in. And if you're only like at that stage, I'm off work, I'm only training for an hour's tops a day. It's all mental at that stage.
And someone who's like, for an athlete, at whatever level, professional, elite, amateur, grassroots, young, and wants to like elevate their performance on game day, on fight day, on match day, the way that you've done, right? So translating the peak performance and training into competition and be able to like prepare mentally for it, using HeadDial as well, right? Using a tool that allow you to prepare mentally. What would you say to them in terms of like um, using something like that and concentrating on mental performance?
Yeah, I would say it's something that you should be keeping. Like you should be keeping like a tally on a track of. Because I find with myself, it's you're always going, how do I feel physically today? Am I sore from training? Am I fit? Am I feeling strong? You never like I personally never question myself like what's my headspace like coming into this. Um, it was always either good or bad. There's no in between. It's just I'm feeling good today. I'm feeling bad today. So I would definitely urge like athletes. Obviously the younger you can start the better, or like the newer in the sport you can start the better, and actually like making a habit of it. But if you're able to like track your mental performance, I think it's a massive benefit.
Great. And what next then for Matthew? What's the
I
next?
am
Have you got a
I
fight coming up? Have you got,
I was
where are you
hoping
going?
they have heard something at this stage, but I am a busy man at the minute and haven't heard anything. So it's probably going to be about June time before I'm back out, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But in the meantime, well, the work continues. Like it's not like I'm sitting about. So um,
yeah,
yeah, hopefully the sooner the better. But it'll probably be about June at this stage.
yeah. Brilliant. Well, I mean, to see your to see that knockout and to know that it's what you'd been visualizing, right?
Yeah,
Um, was uh, it's just obviously music to my ears. It's
yeah,
brilliant, right? Because the more we can get athletes realizing that, it's not everything. You still have to do obviously the work physically, but when you're
yeah,
doing the work physically and combining it
yeah,
with this mental performance work, it has profound effects on game day, right? On fight day, on match day. And
yeah,
like that's your evidence of it, that last fight for sure.
yeah. No, 100%.
Um so great stuff, Matthew. Really appreciate the time.
No, no worries, Tom. Thank you for
Great
having me.
stuff. Yeah,
Thank
we'll
you,
get you
appreciate
on
it.
again after the
Yes,
next one,
after
right?
after the next knockout, we'll be back on.
Yes.
So
Good.
that's
Visualize a different one. Yeah.
yes,
Switch
well,
it up.
yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. Thanks, Matthew.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
very much, mate. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye bye.